Thank you. I'm going to take just a minute or two to talk a little bit about, before we get to the stars of the show, a little bit about the LoRa Alliance. We are excited to be here, and the energy that you can see outside with the Things Network. We just finished 3 days of committee meetings where these guys are working on the details of the specification, the certification program, what are we going to do about marketing and all of that. And it was fantastic to be able to back that up with this event. A little bit about the Alliance. The folks that you see wearing yellow are generally people who just came from the committee meetings. We are now at 537 members worldwide, which is, you know, when you think about in 2015, we started with 11 companies, and to have grown now, I think is a testament to the power of the openness of the Alliance, the idea that we are open for business, meaning we don't presuppose to say you have to use our network or you have to use someone else's network. If you want to build a network, build a network. If you want to partner with someone, use their network, that's great. If you want to start devices, and that's what, you know, if you want to create your own product, which may be a network service offering or maybe just an end device, you can do that. And that's why we've brought this panel together to talk a little bit about helping you understand what the Alliance brings to you in the development of your products and commercializing that and getting it out onto the market. So without further ado, I don't know which slide I'll just introduce our speakers. We have Derek Hunt from Actility, who is also the chair of our certification committee. We have Gertjan from FactoryLab, Charles from Microshare, Hardy from Tracknet, Daniel Quant from MultiTech, and Han from KPN, who is the one of the local network. Obviously, you all know KPN if you're from the area. So, first set of slides. I'm just not sure who's first. So,
yeah, just waiting for it to come up.
Okay, so Daniel
from MultiTech.
I don't think you need two mics.
Well, you stuttered a little bit on it, Geoff. Still, we all got jet lag, so I don't hold you personally for that. So I'm going to not use the mic because I've already got a mic anyway. So big thanks to the Things Network for setting up what is an awesome event here today. So really, a big round of applause for the Things Network. So hands up, who's come across MultiTech before? Don't be shy. Yeah, great. Keep your hands up if you're a customer. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So for those of you who have not come across MultiTech, we're a communications company. We were founded in 1970, analog PSTN connectivity, still sell tens of millions of dollars of that stuff into the scariest applications you can imagine. You know, but, you know, that's the long tail. It's, you know, working its way out. The last 10 years or so, a lot of cellular work, and about four years ago, I think it was, gosh, it was 4 years ago this week, Dave, I think, right? We had a meeting with a group of guys. They called themselves Semtech, and they were telling us how great LoRa was, and we were looking for an unlicensed band technology, and I guess the rest is history. So to describe a little bit more about the kind of customers that MultiTech has, we sell to companies who are doing solar panels on tops of residential and commercial buildings, selling energy back into the grid, a lot of other distributed energy resources now that are creating a more distributed energy network. We're more or less the de facto communication technology in just about every defibrillator that's on the market. They use them in ambulances, run out, defibrillate. By the time you get to the hospital, all your patient data records are there. We've been doing a lot of work with agriculture, which is really, a technology that LoRa has really opened up. We've done hundreds of vineyards now through our partners, and we've expanded into almond trees and citrus orchards and loads of other stuff. And Waterbit, Sensorterra, ITK, Here Labs are just a number of those companies. Smart parking also picking up. We've got a number of design wins. One of them has been P&I in California, who uses our modules, our ARM programmable modules in their parking puck. So that's the kind of company that we are. And the kind of world that we find ourselves in now is a very data-oriented world, right? So 90% of all the data that's ever been consumed has happened in the last 2 years, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's so crazy, it's a number that you can't even imagine. It's 2.5 quintillion. Quintillion, I mean, it's a huge number. It's more than you can possibly imagine. It has something like 18 zeros behind it. It's, and if you take 2.5 quintillion bytes of data and you put it on Blu-ray discs, it's 4 times higher than the Eiffel Tower. Can you even imagine stacking Blu-ray discs 4 times higher than the Eiffel Tower? And that data is happening every day. It happened yesterday. It's going to happen again today. So how do we manage that kind of level of data? How do we get that kind of data up into our networks? How do we even make sense of that data? It's worse than looking for a needle in a haystack. So at MultiTech, we've always been focused around this decentralization of the IoT. In fact, we feel that that data at the edge needs to be more actionable. It needs to hold more value. Just randomly sending up whatever you've got from the edge and then hoping that that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data can somehow be processed up in the cloud efficiently. We just feel that that's a very flawed model. So what we're trying to do in our product lines is we're trying to do the flip. We're trying to turn it all around. We're trying to push that intelligence down to the edge and centralize what needs to be centralized. So the actionable data that you really need, for sure, that needs to be centralized. Key management systems, security, this needs to be managed centrally. But actual processing of the data can be pushed much lower down. And the reason that we're able to do this now, whereas perhaps in the past it was difficult to do, is the Moore's Law is really kicking in. The cost of processors now is getting much lower than it's ever been. You can buy Cortex-M processors now for $1.50. You can buy PICs for less than $1. So, that overhead to put intelligence in your product has never been lower. Real-time operating systems like FreeRTOS or ARM Mbed OS, for example, now give you real power. You can do AI at the edge. You can make your applications do complex event processing. You can format the data up the way that you want it for the platforms that you're sending it to. You can make decisions at the edge. Wireless integration is happening fast. 2.4 gig is now heavily integrated into most of the MCUs in the market. We're starting to see announcements from companies here about integrating LoRa and other wireless technologies. And then with secure elements, like we've put a secure element from Gem Auto on our X-Dot, for example, pulling that into a trusted execution environment that runs in the processor. These are the kind of technologies that we're designing around at the moment, and that enables technology to become scalable. So these 4 elements that enable that intelligence at the edge, they're here today, they've arrived. And so in our products, we use that intelligence wherever we can. The dots are a great example of that. But when you have all of that processing power and that wireless technology and an operating system, you need some sort of way to be able to pull that together in a way in which customers have confidence to use it. And so for that reason, we were, I think, one of the the second, third modules to ever be certified at LoRa Alliance for 868. We were the first module ever to be certified at 915. So we backed the certification of LoRa Alliance from the very beginning, because in an open standard, it's the certification that gives the confidence. It gives people a level of confidence that they can deploy that product and not be the gerbils, the hamsters that are going to be debugging it for everybody else. So we're big behind the certification for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. So thank you ever so much, and I'll hand over to Han, I think.
Just before you get started, to riff a little on what Daniel said, it's great to hear about vineyards. I've been working with a vineyard. They put in a LoRa, they were having water problems. This is in Northern California, and as you know, there's been a drought until recently. And they decided they wanted to find a way to better manage the water flow within their vineyard. They put in a LoRa network for a cost of less than $5,000. Were able to decrease the usage of water by 30% and increase their crop output by 20%. You know, I think that's the power of it. Now, a little bit of interactive before we. I want you all to vote. Which takes more water to create, for one almond or for one grape? How many people think it takes more water to create one grape? How many people think it takes more water to create one almond? And yeah, you all know, right? I mean, it's like 70 times the amount of water to create one dry almond than it does one juicy grape. So don't eat almonds, go drink wine. Okay, next up, Gertjan from FactoryLab.
So welcome everybody. It's nice to be here. My name is Gertjan Strietman, and let me tell you something about FactoryLab, my company. Founded 1.5 years ago, 2016. And basically it's a spin-off of Machinefabriek Strietman. And it's another company where we supply components for dredging vessels and mooring systems for big oil and gas tankers to moor them in the ports. A couple of years ago, because of that mooring systems, we started to develop autonomous solar power systems. It's on the picture below, but in the meantime, we supplied over 60 of those systems in the port of Rotterdam. And it's really important that those systems are active. The downtime from those mooring sites, they don't want to have it. They make a lot of money. So they started to ask, can you monitor what is happening on a system like that? So we started to develop a system, a PLC system with a 4G SIM card. And I really wondered why it was so difficult to make such an easy solution. It took us almost a year, don't ask me why, to fabricate it. And in the end, I thought, okay, there must be some way to do it more easy. That was more or less around the time that the Port of Rotterdam already also started to talk about LoRa. So 1 and 1 is 2. We started to develop our own data logging system, and we let it work on LoRa. So that's probably 1.5 years ago, and that data logger was such a beautiful product that we thought, okay, we want other people to use it as well, but it's a little bit strange as a machine factory that we come with a data logging system. So we decided to start FactoryLab, and just to have a connection with Machinefabriek factory, we called it FactoryLab. With our team, we are specialized in as well the hardware and software development, and especially using the LoRaWAN protocol. What do? We have developed a couple of products, and that we use that as a base to prototype and develop products for our clients. So what you see a lot is that companies want to work with LoRa. They want to measure things, or they already do, but they don't know how. So we hand them over the tools to do so, and because of the products that we developed, we can do it quite easy, so we can have a quick prototyping. I just want to tell you a little bit about some of our products. One of them is the FENNEC. You can see it at the booth of Microchip. They give a workshop with our FENNEC. extreme low power. In sleep mode, 3 microamps, just as you want to do with the LoRa product, of course. It's a combination of the Semtech module with the Atmel SAM-L. And we have it certified with the LoRa Alliance with the 1.0.2 B stack. It has a couple of digital inputs, analog inputs, and a thermistor. And it's really easy to use product. And as I told before, it's also a base that we use to make customized products as well. We don't want to sell the product itself, although the FENNEC we want to sell, but not the end user product. We want our clients to do so. We only want to help them out solving the LoRa issue. The more sophisticated product that we use, also the one that's installed in the solar power systems, that is our SPRINGHARE. It's an industrial grade data logger, and it comes with an aluminium casing. On that one we use the microchip LoRa chip and together with the Atmel SAM-C. It has more digital inputs, more analog inputs. We can communicate with bus systems and that sort of things. So it makes it more sophisticated, and the possibilities are, let's say, endless. We used it for a couple of projects recently. I just want to share a couple of them. One of the nicer projects we did in the port of Rotterdam. We measure berthing velocity of inland going vessels. So they want to know, okay, when a ship is mooring to the Dolphin, what is the speed of impact? Because they calculate all those systems, and they want to see if those calculations are match with the reality. So this is a project that is in use right now. Another client of us, we used our FENNEC and we added a thermistor, and they use it in buildings to measure water lines, and to measure water lines all over the building. They can adjust the warm water going to all the right spots, and it's also for Legionella protection. Another item where we use the FENNEC for is the monitoring and controlling of outdoor lighting. So we can use it to adjust the light, to switch it off and to switch it on, and also to measure the status and the lifetime. I think another good example as well is generators. Not everybody works with them, but across the country there are a lot of generators just standing, and they don't know the tank level, for example, or how much hours it was switched on, or the battery status, or that sort of things. So that's where we use, for example, the SPRINGHARE to monitor those kind of systems. And what's it about? Of course, commercialization. Okay, it's better to write it. What did we learn? Okay, we should be an expert right now because we are scaling up from hundreds of devices to thousands of devices, and we start to sell them, and that's pretty difficult, to be honest. Making the product is one, and we spent almost 1 year only for development, and now we start selling it. We face quite some problems because a lot of people who wants to use or wants to measure things with LoRa, they don't know what it is. So we have to explain them all the time how it works, how the security model is, but also what they can do with it. And you have to come up with a lot of examples, sometimes even more than 10, and then the 11th, they start to think of by themselves. And I think that's where we made a small mistake. Timing is important when going to the market. As a technician, we think, okay, the product should be finished, and then you start selling it. That's not true, I guess. Just start way ahead. And okay, you have to tell something that's not even there, but in the end it will save you a lot of time selling it, because otherwise you will have a gap. Selling will take you months, sometimes even years. And another thing is, in the end you have to get paid. Sounds easy, but everybody wants to have a demonstration model or all kind of products they think of. They want to have it manufactured in your company, but in the end somebody has to pay your bill, and that's a little bit more difficult. So maybe somebody tells about it later. If you want more information about the company, of course, go to the website. Thank you.
So Gertjan, thank you. What I took away from that is start selling product before you have developed the product. So vaporware is good to sell. Okay. Next, I think we have slides for Charles.
That's it.
Yes, cool. Charles, take it away. Microshare.
Good morning. Can I get a quick show of hands of who in the room is a startup, either a founder or working in a startup? Okay, great. Out of you guys, how many are in the software side? Perfect, great. I'm going to try and run through this quite quickly because I know that we're already getting ahead of the time. But what I want to try and share with you a little bit is my journey over the last 5 years. We have started this company, which is a software startup, as you may have guessed, and we are this 5-year overnight success. So just run through a little bit quickly what we do. We're all about monetizing the IoT data, allowing multiple people to access information that might come out from one sensor. That's really what we do in life. I'm not here to pitch my work, but that's the nuts of it. This is my second company that I've founded with the same 3 people. Why does that matter? When you're in a startup, you've got to be working with people that you trust and that you know are going to be in for the long run. I can tell you the last 5 years hasn't been an easy ride. It's not been all champagne and cocktails. And you got to make sure that when you are in the roughs and things are hard, you got no cash, you don't know where your next payroll is going to come from, you got to be with people that you trust. And I'm extremely lucky that the other co-founders that I'm working with, we have a lot of trust. We know each other's strengths and weakness, and that means that we are able to go forward even when things are tough. Showing this slide, I'm not about talking about what we do, but the point here is making it simple to understand what your product does takes a lot of work. This relatively simple way of explaining what we do took 3.5 years to get there. And we're still working on it. It's not finished. It's something that we still do all the time. So work extremely hard at, yes, you're solving complex problems, but make it really simple for people to get it in a very quick, simple way. So this is what we do. We get data from sensors. We do a bunch of things with it, apply rules, allow people to kind of think about how they're going to share that data, and then obviously we let people access it on the other end. I'll skip it a little bit. This is just kind of the innards of the system. This probably, for the interest of time, I'm not going to go into that. Our routes to market, again, you got to think very hard as we were just saying a minute ago. You got to start thinking about how you're going to sell this thing. It's not just about putting the nuts and bolts together. We've gone down having sort of really 4 key areas that we use to get our products to market. The first one is you got to find some direct clients. You got to find people who are paid engagements that are going to get you to prove that the solution end-to-end works. And we've done a number of that with, luckily, some very large clients that gave us that credibility when we go to the next piece, which is what we call the OEMs. We think our product is probably over time not something that people buy to build a complete solution. We are one part of an ecosystem from the sensors all the way to analytics. And we kind of fit in sort of near the end. But we certainly don't aim to be everything to everyone. So we are working with a lot of very large companies that are going to take our product, embed that into their overall piece. That takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of convincing. And so don't underestimate the time it's going to take for that. The third piece for us is the LoRa Alliance. So we joined the Alliance about a year ago. And that just has been one of those aha moments for us. We found that the ecosystem, which had obviously done all that hard work of connecting the sensors and creating the networks, was just really looking for something that we bring to the table, which is kind of actually how do you multiply the value of that data. And working with the Alliance has been a real business boost for us. And the final piece is the community. We are obviously at a community-led event here with the Things Network. We do a lot of work with various communities. Obviously, the Things Network is one of the things that we work quite a bit with. We organize hackathons. We try and obviously give back some of the code that we build to open source. So again, that's a great way to engage and kind of get some success through that route. So 4 quick learnings from my side. especially if you're in the software, you are able to kind of iterate a lot. So get software out, get it tested and used by real end users, and improve or abandon. We've done 2 major pivots of our platform. The core idea and the core assets actually are the same, but we've ended up over time kind of abandoning a couple of things that we saw just were not working, and you don't want to spend good money after bad. Second thing is, no one buys a platform. You got to try and find some vertical markets in which you're going to get your initial traction. We ended up starting in building management. We knew nothing about real estate or building management 5 years ago. We came from banking and finance and insurance. That was kind of our background. But we just found that the stuff we were doing was very relevant in an environment like this building where there's a landlord, there's a tenant, there's service people, there's people that are coming in and out who are visitors. So suddenly being able to share that data with all those various people gets a lot of interest. Selling to large organizations is just like selling to a little country. So we were trying to get into, as I said, OEMs, so very large organizations, IBMs and Microsoft and Cisco's of the world. This takes very thorough campaigns. This takes, tapping into all sorts of parts of the organization to kind of get some alignment for someone to finally say, yes, I think we want to start using you. We're going to start paying to have your product within our family. And then the final one, obviously I think you already are convinced, but leverage and contribute to open community systems. The Things Network is one of those great platforms where you have tens of thousands. I think 30,000 was the figure mentioned this morning. 30,000 developers around the world who are already using that platform. So if you find yourself contributing and leveraging that platform, you're going to find that you get a lot more traction quicker. Thank you.
Charles, thanks. For those, and anybody out here who's doing a startup knows that it's really tough. I've done 3. None of them have succeeded. I could write a book on how not to do a startup. I could not write a book on how to do a startup. But also, the other thing, Charles, I should mention is not only did they join the LoRa Alliance, but then Charles jumped into the deep end as chair of our marketing or co-chair of our marketing committee to help drive where we're going. So it's been fantastic to have you on board. Next, I'd like to have Derek Hunt talk a little bit, as co-chair of our certification committee, talk a little bit about the certification program.
Hi, so welcome all. My name is Derek Hunt. Thank you, Geoff. I think actually... Bit closer.
Yeah, there we go.
Just put it on your chin. Okay, so, sorry, thank you for the advice. So effectively what I want to do is just very quickly run through and introduce to you all the certification scheme that we're doing. As we've talked about, it's an open standard, and that is absolutely brilliant, but what we need to do is make sure that we have consistency of the devices that are out there. So within the Alliance, what we've actually put together is really just this certification scheme. And why are we doing it? What's the point of going through that? One, obviously, you have to make sure your device works. We've seen so many instances where someone's taken a device and they've got it onto a network and they're playing with it and it sort of seems to work, and then they move it somewhere else and suddenly it's a different feature, it's a different function, and that no longer works, or it has to go back to be reworked. So the whole thing is to get the device certified. We go through all of the protocol, we go through every functionality that your device will hit later on when it actually gets into whatever networks it actually gets deployed with. It also gives obviously the reassurance, and we will sort of guarantee with that we can work then with any network in any condition. So one of the other key things really is just to reduce this support cost. It's much cheaper when you've first developed it, before you start rolling out hundreds of thousands of these devices, to prove and check that it actually works. You don't want to end up in the situation where you've got to do a recall or you've got to start going down the firmware over the air to try and do it. So if you get it tested up front and you get it sorted up front, you'll have the confidence then to go it. Also, it's a really strong point from a marketing point of view, and thank you to Daniel and the others for sort of saying, to have a device certified is a real big tick and a real big plus. So it actually helps from your own marketing side of it, and it proves that you have a real product out there. And the final one really is, as we've sort of talked about, is the sort of cost side of it. If you can try and do it, one of the drivers from the Alliance was this is a very low-cost ecosystem. So we're not talking a certification of hundreds of thousands of dollars or euros or whatever. We're trying to keep the certification very simple. It's 1 day at a test lab, and that's it. You go there in the morning, you have a couple of hours to set your device up, you have 4 hours to run the test, you walk away with the certificate at the end of it. And that was the goal, that it's a very simple, easy process. So I won't go through the detail. If you want to know any more about how it works and all the rest of it, come and see me afterwards or grab me at any point during the day. Just to introduce that we also do RF testing. We've got a guideline so that you can actually be confident not just about the protocol side, but can actually test the RF performance of your device. And we're seeing now a lot of operators are putting networks onto their devices onto their network, and they're seeing issues because of the radio performance side of it. So we've also published a guideline that allows us all to be able to measure those in a consistent way. So finally, we've got authorized test houses, and we've got a number of them all over the world. And they are offering just certification, not just in a region, but for other regions as well. So if you're in Europe and you want to ship stuff to Asia, we can test it here for shipping to Asia or the US and vice versa. So I'll be very quick. My last sort of key thing is save time, certify now. So to save time later, do it now. Thank you.
Derek, thanks, and thanks for getting us, saving us time and getting us back on time. But you'll notice, I mean, I think one of the strengths of the Alliance, one of the strengths of the LoRaWAN protocol and all that is the idea of we embrace agility, agile design, and rapid prototyping and things. So it's not a crazy expensive endeavor to get started, and I bow to Hardy because he's now created a successful startup, and so he's done what I'm not able to do. So next, I'd like to introduce Hardy to talk a little bit about Tracknet and what they're doing.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so at Tracknet, can you guys hear me okay? Is the mic on? So at Tracknet, we have developed the next generation of core network server and also designed solutions end-to-end really to support the picocell model to augment or build network coverage. So our team was kind of involved in LoRa since day one. Most of the team is coming from Semtech or IBM. We took the plunge about 18 months ago to do a startup and try to build these solutions, and it's been a real learning experience to go from kind of the core technology background to more solutions and being able to optimize those for different verticals and also for consumers. So the solutions that we are building, as I mentioned, are really designed to augment network coverage around the femtocell model. So all of our solutions include a femtocell or gateway, not that you have to use those, but we were really focusing on ways to be able to scale network coverage quickly at a very attractive cost structure. Because in markets like the US, I think a pure tower-based deployment model is not feasible due to the tower rental model that we have in the US. Just the operational expense of a nationwide network in the US is $120 million. So we're trying to find ways of how we can scale coverage quickly without a very high CapEx and a high OpEx. So we've done end-to-end solutions around consumer, which is called Tabs, which we just launched at CES. We've also done solutions around asset tracking, and a lot of the devices that we are using in the Tabs consumer solution we're also leveraging in the smart building space. So this is the Tabs consumer solution. We've done all the traditional home security or smart home devices, door window, motion, temperature, humidity, and indoor air quality. We're also doing quite a bit on the tracking and the localization space. Each one of these hubs in a femtocell model will generate a few kilometers of coverage. They're all part of the network. Clearly also it augments or leverages the tower infrastructure. So we're really trying to optimize that localization or tracking perspective, which sounded easy going in, but it's far more complex problem, as Nicola highlighted earlier, of really how you optimize the user experience, the battery lifetime, and still trying to get a device which is attractive from a consumer standpoint. We also are doing quite a bit in the localization space. Again, I think what we found in this solution really is to really create an optimal solution. We really had to optimize both the end device side, but also a lot of things on the network side to be able to reach the goals of the customers from a cost, user experience, battery lifetime standpoint. So learnings from 18 months as a startup. Hardware is hard. I think we were a bit naive going in. Doing a PCB and an off-the-shelf, housing is pretty easy. But when you start to really do new industrial design, mechanical testing, ramp up in the OEM to achieve the target cost that you need, that's where the complication comes in. One of the main reasons we did the alliance, going back 5 years ago was, I think we learned early on in Semtech, is the only way to scale was really standardization and certification. But coming from an end product solution and be able to see this realized, really reinforced, how important that is. And we developed solutions really for our network server and our core network, but being able to see them easily plug into a Swisscom network with Actility or into a Senate network in the US and have them work seamlessly, it truly demonstrates the LoRa scale capability that LoRa has. Choose your OEM carefully from a startup perspective. Make sure you understand clearly the payment terms, credit requirements, and forecasting obligations from your OEM. Some of the larger OEMs, I think this being a startup, some of these terms can be quite difficult for you. If you're a small startup, I would recommend probably going with the mid-size OEM. I think you can typically get better terms on payment, credit requirements, that kind of stuff with some of the more of the mid-size OEMs. Also, from being able to really optimize your solution, I would recommend manage your own design or use a design house that you have trust and confidence in. Manage your own BOM, and I've really learned that you have to negotiate and manage your own BOM and your own pricing. You can't rely on the OEM to really do and serve that function for you. Also, the last item here is thank God for firmware over-the-air updates. In the case of the industrial location solution, what we thought was really the profile of the device and the user experience was actually quite different from what the customer wanted in the end. So we did the firmware initially based on what we believed, but I think what the customer really wanted was completely different. And I think in that solution, we did over 15 firmware over-the-air updates, embarrassing enough, to really optimize battery lifetime performance of that device. So I think that's a critical feature that after doing some of these large-scale deployments, it's very important for everybody in the LoRa ecosystem to adopt and implement that into their end devices. So final thought, which I think is critical for LoRa and critical for these solutions that people are developing and commercializing, is we call it the Ohio principle, which Ohio stands for only handle it once. So most of the applications that we're all targeting and all building for, if you ever have to go out and touch those devices again, you've lost the ROI of that application. So when you deploy something, you have to be, I think, certain that you're never going to have to go touch it again. And so for us, that was really firmware over-the-air updates became critical, is that I think it's very hard to ensure everything you develop, you're never going to have to modify it. But having this capability in LoRa really made us able to deploy large-scale deployments and be able to go back in and adjust them and still give a strong ROI to the operator or the end application.
Hardy, thanks. I completely agree. The idea of firmware over the air is your friend if you want to do agile, lean design and development. You won't, guaranteed, right? You won't get it right the first time. No one ever does. But so you do have an opportunity to go back without having to go out and touch the hardware. FOTA is your friend. So last, but certainly not least, I'm interested in hearing from Han from KPN. I've been working with KPN since the inception of the LoRa Alliance and their innovation lab and their IoT Academy, and all of that has been phenomenal. So Han?
Thank you all it's great to be here. Just a minute ago, I saw some hands. Who's working for a startup? There were a lot of hands. Well, I work at another company, KPN. It's one of the biggest telco companies in the Netherlands, and it's very traditional. We've been in the IT business already since the beginning of 2G, and hopefully all the mobile phones you have, there's KPN SIM in it. That about KPN. We've been in. I think we have a little bit of broader perspective than most of the developers who are at the FINNEC conference. We don't look at the technology specifically, or at a device, or at a sensor, or at the LoRa connectivity. We look for what is initially the customer value, and if it's possible, we prevent about talking about technology with the customer, but we talk about how we can make the solution happen. And if you look at the value chain, it's we have the sensors that measures what you want to know. We have the connectivity, and then you have the IT, what gives insight into the data that is given. And we are one. I work for a big company, but it doesn't feel like it, because we have been with LoRa since the beginning. We're now moving. We're big in the connectivity business. We're also moving into LTE-M. We're one of the first operators in the world who is going into that one. So it feels like it's great to be in this room with first movers, and we as KPN, at least I feel that I'm also working at a first mover. So if we talk about LoRa and the way to commercialize what we see from the last couple of years, we've talked to many customers. We have talked to customers who want the whole chain delivered for them. We have customers who develop their own products and only want the connectivity from us. And we see basically you have to be in balance. There's a lot of companies who know a lot about technology, but only a specific part of the technology. Or we have companies who have a lot of marketing, but don't have a good product. And it's very hard, if you talk about commercialization of your products, to focus on both axes. And you need to have a commercial plan as well. And a commercial plan is not, I'm going to do 100,000 devices next year. How are you going to do it? Do you have dedicated sales? Are you going to use an online channel? Are you going to sell by partners or directly? If you're going to do 100,000 devices, how are you going to scale up? Have you thought about the logistics process? Have you do intensive testing of your device? So we see a big shift between companies who are able on all the axes, or companies who have various part of the business activities arranged, and need to have help on one of the aspects. I think for now it's a panel. We have 10 minutes left for questions, so I'll stop here.
And thank you very much. So I think we do have a couple of minutes for questions. Are there, if there's none from the audience, I certainly have some, but anybody have a question they'd like to ask the panelists? Okay. Well, my question, I guess, yes, hang on. I get to run around and hand out microphones.
Thank you. Just one question about certification roadmap. Seems that now certification involved only the end device. Our company, for example, I have produced a LoRa 1 gateway. So in this case, we have to perform some kind of certification, or not. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, really good question. So. Obviously, when we started the Alliance, the area we really wanted to cover on most was the end device, and the certification program has been put in place to cover that end device. We are looking, and we've had requests now to start looking at whether or not we can look at gateways. I think there's a couple of different things with the gateways, though, because they're doing a lot of packet forwarding, so they're not really involved at the protocol level It's more how you transition it from the radio side to the back end side. So it's not just going to be a straightforward sort of protocol test if you're going to do anything meaningful for the gateway. You're going to have to start getting involved in the RF side of it as well. So that sort of testing is going to take a bit longer to sort out, but it is one of the things we are now being asked for. The other issue we need to also look at, obviously, is the scale of it. How many gateways are going to go through that? What I don't want to do is say, okay, we put a position in place, but it's so expensive because there's so few devices coming through that actually no one's going to take it to it. So we are looking at it. When we can bring down potentially the cost and the scale of it, I think that will be the time for us to look at implementing it.
And I think to add on to that, right, if you're not a member, join the alliance, become a member, and then help drive those, what Derek is, right? We are, at the end of the day, whatever our members need us to be. And so if our gateway vendors come to us and say, we need testing, we need certification, we want all gateways to be certified, we will put in a program to do that. Absolutely. Okay, so you are a member. Great, great. So now we're hearing that Derek's hearing it, right? I'm hearing it. And as we hear it from more, but it has been on the RF performance side, understanding like the back end, there's a back end specification, back end 1.0, and understanding, making sure that's done correctly for the communication between the gateway and the network server and all the rest of that. So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I did. Yeah. Great, I can just shout whenever I want now. So as a manufacturer of gateways, which we're in probably a 4th generation design at this point, we wrestled long and hard with certification and how that could be done, because in other industries that clearly happens. But at the LoRa Alliance, as Derek was saying, the protocol, the LoRa WAN protocol, starts at the edge and it ends in the network server, and the link between the network server and the gateway is not standardized today. Every network server out there, the Things Network, Actility, Orbiwise, Stream, LoRa, everybody did that differently. It's a proprietary connection between the gateway and the network server. So protocol testing, as you would expect on a device, doesn't really exist. Instead, it becomes performance testing. How good is the RF? Now, that's a little subjective, right? If I make a $50 little, dumb sort of gateway that plugs into another device using a USB key, should I be getting the same kind of performance as I would on a $1,000 macro gateway? So personally, I'm all in favor of doing the performance testing. We've done a lot of performance testing. It's not easy to do with the equipment that's out there today. But I think that that's a bit subjective and the kind of thing you'd probably want to share with your customer rather than consider yourself certified with. Good news is, though, that there's a lot of work in the LoRa Alliance to do a generic packet forwarder, a standardized packet forwarder, and when that happens, then for sure you can certify.
I was just going to make that last point that Daniel already did. There is work now to standardize that communication from the gateway back to the server, and I think once that happens, it will be easy to do certification of the gateway.
Up, down front, and then.
Yes, in line with that subject, I have a question about the bandwidth that is available. As an end node, we can only use the 1% duty cycle for sending messages, but a gateway can send more than 1% messages. But that is, in my opinion, a little bit different because it's also a transmitting device. So how is it organized or ruled?
Okay, I can probably answer some of that question. What we're actually utilizing in the gateway is for Europe, and obviously it's different for there. This is purely for Europe. For Europe, there is a special frequency, which is the one used by the gateway as part of the RX2 transmission that utilizes a set frequency. And with that frequency, you are allowed to go to the 10% duty cycle. So we are utilizing that frequency, which is available as part of the ISM band, to allow the gateways to have that 10% duty cycle. And from the element, obviously, with every element, the intention is you are not going to want that much downlink. As Nicola said today, this is an asymmetrical system, so you need to make sure that when you design your networks, you're actually making sense that actually you don't use confirmed frames, you want to use unconfirmed as much as possible so that you can preserve even that 10% bandwidth that you do have from the gateway. So I don't know.
But the next issue is that the firmware over the air. Well, then I think it will be difficult.
Right, and one of the things for the whole firmware over the air, and again what Nicola was mentioning today, was doing that, you can't afford just to do firmware over the air to one device. The idea is that you'd put a whole range of devices into a multicast group,
right,
and you will download to all of them at the same time.
The other thing is you trickle out firmware, right? You don't have to burst firmware over the air updates, right? It's that can happen over a longer period of time, so we can manage still within the duty cycle in order to do that. And using multicasting means we're not doing point-to-point updates. One more question, I think. Maybe we have time.
Thank you. This is a commercialized session, so most of the questions are technology. I have a commercial question, especially for the commercial guys. What is the most compelling argument for selling an IoT product or a LoRa product, and to which role? Because you have to do with security, with business, with technology architect, and so on, and they all have to be convinced about this solution. Can you give some examples about this and based on your experience?
Sure. So from our side, we've certainly found that the people who are today getting on board are the operations people. And we're getting to the stage where the ecosystem is giving us, likes of Tracknet and a lot of the others, we're getting devices that are simple enough to kind of package into a box and kind of ship to a client and have very little IT involvement, if any. So that's certainly been what we've found, is that going to someone who has a business problem, whether it's monitoring the quality of this room or knowing how much is in a waste bin, that's going to make such a difference to their business that they're going to have to kind of back in and ask for forgiveness inside their own business, rather than go and go through the houses of technology. Because the technology guys in most large organizations, your typical clients, they're just too busy with security and keeping the lights on, that they don't have a lot of bandwidth for innovation. And this is still where we live.
Yeah, I'd say as well that there's a lot more stakeholders in this industry, as you alluded to, IT, OT, and purchasing, and many others. So there's a lot more stakeholders now, and we often refer to POCs and trials, don't we? It felt like a year or two ago we were doomed to be in a permanent set of POCs and trials. And those POCs and trials is really another way of saying satisfying the stakeholders. It's not really about proving that the technology works, or at least it is in part, but it's really about satisfying those stakeholders that their interest is also being served. So it's been a timely story, but looks a lot better now than it did 2 years ago when we were in permanent POCs and trials.
Artie, the last word?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done quite a bit of work, and I think it's we getting to the point now where we can quickly scan. It's all automatic. That device is automatically provisioned into the network. So it's becoming now a very simple process that people who don't have any background of the technology don't even have to understand. I scan a QR code, I plug in, install the device, and I go. So I think we're reaching that point in LoRa to where we really have the user experience and the installation experience to a point where it can scale to extremely high volumes.
So with that, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.